Moving on.
The police are not neutral. They're a personal army for the government of this country.
Sounds like a bullshit conspiracy theorist to me. Yes, they do have to side with what the law says. However, it is not their job to just suppress people that the government doesn't like. That is against free speech. And as far as I'm aware, most if not all Western countries, including the USA, have laws of free speech. You are free to protest peacefully, and if you're not breaking the law, you're not breaking the law just by saying something. It's your actions that may break the law. Understand? You cannot be thrown in jail just because you say something that you don't like. Isn't it the First Amendment that gives you free speech? So just to throw them in jail just because the government doesn't like what they said, wouldn't that be against the First Amendment? Wouldn't that be censorship? The government don't do that in these countries.
So if you have something to say against the government, you've got the police force to contend with. We've seen it time and time again. It doesn't matter if you're one of these new Tea Party protesters and you think that your protests are peaceful.
Well, if their protests are peaceful, then there's not going to be an issue. I still think the Tea Party protesters are spouting absolute bullshit and are relying on huge misinformation, possibly racist misinformation, but that's another rant entirely.
You know what? Eventually your protests are going to be cracked down. They're going to be...
Only if they turn violent, and that's why the police are there, because protests can turn violent. This is not like the civil rights era where the police were just going and watering down the black people for during peaceful protests. That's the reason why the protest worked, because people saw on TV how these cops were being made by the laws in place to break up, beat up and hose down literally the black people who were just campaigning for civil rights peacefully in the streets, and people saw this and thought, this isn't right, they're not doing anything wrong, what's this bullshit about? So they sided with them. If they attack you for no apparent reason, people are going to side with you. And if the politicians see that they're not going to vote for them if they are attacking innocent people for just expressing their beliefs, then they're not going to be voted for. In a democracy, you do have the power to vote for who you want. Now, the politicians can lie. I'm not suggesting they can't, and I'm not suggesting every politician is good. I'm not suggesting that every politician will do absolutely everything in their power all the time for the utmost greater good. They are not angels. Nobody are angels. But I don't think that they are demons either, as you are portraying them.
Cracked down upon by the people in power, just like the protests of the peace movement in the 2000s and the peace movement in the 1960s, or the labor movements in the 1930s.
Big straw man. I don't know very much about these particular protests. However, I do withhold judgment until I can be provided more information. But not that you're doing. You're not providing any sources for these at all.
Police have always been there, with their truncheons, with their shields, with their tear gas, with their rubber bullets, with their sometimes not so rubber bullets.
Well, this could be before the invention of rubber bullets and the use of non-lethal force, but often they are there as a preventative measure. Being a preventative measure, a just-in-case measure, doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be using it.
To quell the protest of the people, to quell the right of the people peaceably to assemble. And I don't...
No, they are there to quell violence. Have you seen what kind of violence and riots can go in the US? Molotov cocktails, throwing them into shops, throwing them into vans, cars, blowing things up, overturning ambulances and even police cars. When people get like that, what exactly do you expect them to do? Do you think, oh, they'll just disperse eventually? There's nothing wrong with blowing shit up in the street, now is there? With the cops there, they can disperse the violence and they can disperse the crowd and control it, and often using non-lethal force and bringing those who have particularly spurred on or started the violence, they can bring them to justice so that they don't do it again and don't repeat it. Because they need to be there, otherwise there would be many more casualties and even deaths, both injuries and deaths, if they weren't there to break such dangerous behaviours up.
Well, plenty of people will tell me, well, my cousin, or my uncle, or my father, or my sister, or my mother, they're a cop, and they're a great person.
This is completely irrelevant, both in the point raised and the response. I suspect he's strawmanning this again. But I would say that the cops, regardless of what laws they are serving, they are not bad people inherently. The cops are not the problem. The cops are not the evil minions of an all-power controlling government. They're not perfect. No laws are perfect. No human being is perfect. No collection of human beings are perfect. But that doesn't make them evil either.
You know what? I have no doubt in my mind that there are plenty of police officers in this country who are nice people. They help their neighbors, they help their friends, they're nice, they're courteous, they're generous people.
And generally, the cops are there to help those kinds of people. And they are there to do these kinds of actions so that those who are helping people are able to do so, and that those who harm the people are taken away.
But they work on the behalf of a corrupt government.
Again, hasty generalization.
And as long as that is the case, I am against them. Just as I would be against a nice Nazi. And there were plenty of them. And I'm not saying that police are as bad as Nazis. At least, not yet.
Slippery slope argument, plus Godwin's law use. The Nazis were a political ideal of people who were inherently discriminating, who were out there to literally promote one race above another, and to push all those that didn't agree with them aside. Not every government is like the Nazis, TJ. Not every political system is fascist. In a democracy, you can choose to elect these people or not. You can elect the lesser of two evils. And when a decent person comes along, the right person comes along, you vote for them. I'm starting to think that you probably see life as some kind of GTA game where you're the good guy and you can do whatever the hell you want and the cops are just there to get in your way. Well, let me tell you something. They're not there to get in your way. If someone does burgle you or murder your wife, they are there to make sure that they don't burgle again. And that if you survive this time, you don't get burgled by more people and probably killed the next time. And I would like to ask, what do you suggest as an alternative to cops? What do you suggest that we have in terms of law enforcement to make sure that these people get taken away and don't commit crimes again? Again, maybe sometimes law's unfair, but take that to the lawmakers, not the law enforcers, who are there for the greater good. May not always be perfect, but sometimes the greater good is actually for the greater good, which benefits society as a whole. Thank you for watching. This is Nemo 060, and I shall see you all on the dark side of the moon. Off and away.